We don't make the broker's commission. All of my brokers get paid directly from the insurance carrier. We make an advisory consultant override fee, which has absolutely no bearing on the broker. So they're whole, they get paid, their name is on the application, and we just service the account so they could go out and continue to sell, like you said, the products that they specialize in.
Welcome, Model FAs. I am excited to bring our guest to you today, Michael Cohen. Michael is the owner and president of a second-generation insurance wholesaler, a former stand-up, which I'm excited for today, and a writer. And for those of you who are looking to work with business owners and their employees, this is certainly an episode you're going to want to tune into and take some notes. There's been some changes that require businesses in certain states, and more states are getting on board, where it makes it much easier because it's something that they're required to do. And it's a way that you can get in the door and then obviously go ahead and cross-sell in other ways as you continue to build the relationship. So, Michael, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you, buddy. I appreciate you having me.
Awesome. So tell us a little bit about your story, just for context. So I know, when we had talked, initially, you had let me know about your stand-up career. You had let me know, that this business was originally from your father, who had since passed in 2017, and then you've stepped in and taken it over. So give us a little bit about your backdrop, just for context.
Yeah, I'm his only child, and unfortunately, he did pass away in 2017. Unexpectedly. So you really realize what life is worth, because my father was only 67, which, in today's day and age is still considered young. And I think is a good segue to the insurance aspect, because it really gave me a value of what I found to be important from life insurance and how anything could happen at any time. I mean, the last words that I heard from him was, have a good vacation. And then him and I went our separate ways. You really don't know. A lot of young people in this business don't appreciate disability insurance and life insurance until they lose a loved one. And that's what I'm trying to sort of use my story to help expand into that. But, to your point, I was 18 years old. I'm his only child. My father told me when I graduated high school in Long Island, go ahead and get your license. And my response to that was, I already have it. I can drive. And he's like, come on, man, stop breaking my chops. I really would like you to get it. And I kept saying to him, the more that you ask me to be in this, the least I want to do it. So stop asking me. I said, but if you're such a good salesperson, give me a reason as to why I should get into the family business. And he goes, listen, God forbid something happened to me. Your mother wants nothing to do with it. I don't have any other children. Just get your goddamn license. And I'm like, all right. So this way, at least the money could stay in the family and commissions could flow. And he was looking at it from an estate planning perspective. So on the cusp of graduating high school and entering Boston University for a television and film career, which was very liberal arts, of course, in the beginning, I said, sure, I'll go ahead and I will get your license. So I did that in the summer while bartending at night and having some fun in the summer, go to college, and not realizing that I would ultimately get into this within a short 6-year window, because when I graduated college, my senior year was 9/11, and it was hard enough to get into the entertainment business as it was, let alone after that point in time. So my film professor and writing professor said, hey, you've got a really good thing going for you. I'd like to send you to LA and write sitcoms. And I said, wow, that would be great. When do you want to talk? And she said, let's have a conversation when you come back from Thanksgiving break. Well, the Writers Guild went on strike, 9/11 happened, and then I come back and I speak to her, and she was the co-creator of Charles in Charge and Full House, and I said, so how's it looking? She goes, not too good in New York, but if you'd like to go out to LA, you could probably write for the Drew Carey Show. And at the time, I knew him as a stand-up comedian, and he had a show called Whose Line Is It Anyway? So I'm like, great. That would be cool to do improv and this and that. Well, I come back after Christmas break and New Year's, and it turns out that Drew Carey ended up signing for The Price is Right when he took over for Bob Barker, and there was no Drew Carey show. So it was a matter of all these tipping points in a very short semester. And then when I come home for spring break, my father's like, insurance is looking pretty good, isn't it? And that's when I decided to solidify my license and said, let me work for you part-time. And then at nights, I was writing for comedians and doing stand-up comedy in New York City.
Love it. Obviously, there's a decent amount of takeaways there, but since you're a comedian, my joke is it's good to hear that you're an only child. My parents also stopped at perfection, so I'm glad we have that in common.
Exactly. I don't mind it at all. I've got two boys, though. It's kind of funny because in a weird way, I didn't want them to be sort of alone, but they're very close. They're 22 months apart.
Cool. So give everyone a sense. I know you specialize in a particular niche within the insurance space that is required by law for some states. So I'm going to keep my question broad to begin with, and then we'll get more specific over time. But give us a sense as to what that niche is and what is it that's required by law.
Well, in the state of New York, New Jersey, and the Hawaiian Islands, ironically enough, which copied New York's laws, if you get hurt off the job and you own a company, you have to cover your employees. It's like workers' comp, but it's off the job. Workers' comp is if you get hurt on the job. And what a lot of people don't realize is you have to cover this or you get a fine from the governor's office. So my father was selling life insurance. He didn't like it. And he literally got into a car accident on his way to Stony Brook Dental School because he was supposed to be a dentist. And I guess the running joke was that's what all good Long Island Jewish parents wanted their kids to do, is either become an attorney or a dentist or a doctor in the 1960s. And he really didn't want to do it, but the guy that he hit, like I said, was a life insurance salesman, and he goes, listen to me. I hear how you spoke to that cop. You must have half a brain on you because you're going to Stony Brook's dental school. I'm looking for a salesman with an underwriter's mouth. Why don't you come and work for me, and we'll pretend this accident never happened? And my father's like, you're bribing me. He goes, well, it's either that or I'll call your dad, my grandfather, and tell him that you hit me and it was all your fault and you'll be in a heap of crap. So my dad's like, no, listen, what do you need me to do? He goes, work off the accident and come and work for me for a few months and let's see what happens. He never turned back. He ended up selling life insurance, and he met people along the way that introduced him to this specific niche product that you just mentioned a moment ago, which is something that you have to have by law. And a lot of people would break his chops over time saying, you're never going to make money, kid. And my dad's motto was always, nickels, dimes, and quarters make dollars, and it is not what you earn, it is what you keep. So he did not want to be top heavy. He figured, I'm going to knock on every door in the town I live in, and then when I'm done, I'm going to go to the next door. And this was when you were able to solicit. There was no
Right.
solicitation signs, And he would go to a section of Queens, Long Island, and he would knock on doors and go, you have to have this by law. It's a warm lead. I'm not trying to sell you something you don't have, and I'd like to help you out. And he wrote a lot of business in the late 70s to 1980. And then when he said, I'm so good, maybe I'll convert this into a wholesale operation because I ultimately am going to be old one day and I don't want to continue to do this. So let me have the brokers work for me. So what did he do? He'd knock on a door and go, hey, David, I took over one of your accounts. And you'd be like, what are you talking about? You compete with me. You took away my corporation. I was my client. He goes, listen, I'm going to give it back to you. I'm going to be the general agent. You're going to get the full broker commission. But if you have this account, you must have others like it. So endorse over your entire book of business to me for disability and let me manage it. And that's how he started to build his wholesale distribution model, which I've now taken to a whole nother realm. And his goal was focus on what people have to have by law and then talk to them about life insurance, long-term disability, dental, and vision. And it's worked. And now here we are today. We've been doing this since 1976, 77, and we have business in 15 states, and we manage $115 million of premium through the brokerage community.
Excellent. So if I'm an advisor and I'm listening to this so far, I hear New York, New Jersey, and the Hawaiian Islands, and I'm like, okay, well, I don't live in any of those states, or I don't have clients in any of those states. Let's say I'm in Mass, or I'm in Connecticut, or I'm in where I'm at right now, I'm in Florida. Are these the only three states that require them to have short-term disability by law, or are there others as well, or are there others on the horizon? Like, how is this relevant to me if I don't live in those states?
That's a great question. It's not relevant to you unless you have clients that are in those states. So, for example, if you have a friend, and Florida's huge because it's basically the second coming of New York. So a lot of my Long Island clients that move down there, they still have clients in Miami and Fort Lauderdale and also in New York City. But they do not need it in Miami and Fort Lauderdale. They do need it in New York City. But that I get that as an entree to then work with someone in Florida to say, well, Mike, you helped me on that state mandated product in New York. Can you help me with life insurance, long-term disability, and dental in Florida? So I'll work on the ancillary products in Florida. But the only 3 states, to answer your question, that have it are New York, New Jersey, Hawaii, on a private, fully insured basis. California has it, Rhode Island have it, but you have to write it through the state. You can't move it to a private insurance company. But recently, Connecticut and Massachusetts added a paid family leave component, which is what Governor Cuomo implemented in New York, over and above the short-term disability law. And that's now effective coming up into New England. So to give you an example, if you have a corporation in Boston, you've got money coming out of your paycheck right now for paid family leave, which means you basically, if you want to have paternity, or if your wife wants to have an extended maternity, or if you want to help your father or a grandparent with dementia, you could legally file for mandatory paid leave and you have guaranteed job protection. So Massachusetts copied New York and Connecticut copied Massachusetts and New York. And the next 2 states that are scheduled to have this is Colorado and Oregon. So paid family leave is slowly becoming what looks to be federal across the United States.
Okay. Is that different than the short-term well, obviously it's different than the short-term disability, but is that something that's just fully funded by the company, or are there products, insurance products that you offer that can help with that paid leave as well?
So what we can do is we could remove people from the state insurance fund in Massachusetts and Connecticut and place them with a private insurance company like Guardian, Hartford, whoever, and save their clients money. I like to be the door opener, or like the quote unquote broker's broker, like a Jerry Maguire, and go in and say, listen, if you've been having trouble trying to get the medical, or if you've been having trouble trying to get the 401k, I don't do any of those, but I can help you get it. Let me teach you how. So I help advisors get in the door by asking the right questions. And I start with something that's state mandated by law, which is what my father did 45 years ago.
Okay. And then you mentioned Colorado and Oregon are on the horizon.
Upcoming. Yeah.
Have you gotten any wind of any other states? Like, do you picture this rolling out through all the states over time, or is that not on the horizon?
No, that's a great question. 30 states implemented this in the last election to be implemented on a federal basis, and a majority of those states were blue.
Yeah.
So the fact that we have a blue government at the moment leads to believe the next 4 years is going to be pretty exciting in the paid family leave space. Now, listen, Colorado might say, we offer it, but it's not commissionable. We don't know. There is commission to brokers in Mass. There is commission to brokers in Connecticut, and there is commission to brokers in New York. The one difference in New York is every time you write a short-term disability policy or DBL in New York City, let's say, you're simultaneously getting commission on paid family leave. So you're getting paid 2 times. Connecticut and Mass only has leave. There is no state mandated underlining short-term disability product, but they're copying what Governor Cuomo implemented in 2017.
Okay. So if I'm an advisor, I have clients in the states that you mentioned. So call it New York, New Jersey, Hawaiian Islands, as well as, soon to be potentially Colorado and Oregon. If I'm the advisor, how do you and I interact? Am I calling your office and you're coming out to the appointment with me? Am I giving you the information? How does that process work? How do you partner with advisors?
So as long as you have a license, you have a health insurance license or a life and health license, basically you would contact my organization and we would tell you the information that's needed to save your potential client money. So you might already have the estate planning or the workers' comp or the home and the auto, whatever it is, you have a client or an insured in one of those states. And I would basically say, listen, have you asked about the paid family leave plans? And they say, no, I've heard about it. I didn't know about it. I say, well, let me tell you the information that's required, which is normally in the form of a census. And then we take it from there. And my office does all of the marketing and servicing of the account. We also give all of our brokers free tracking software so they know when all of their insureds are pending for non-pay, because if the client doesn't pay Dave, they don't get their commission. So in a way, I've shifted post-COVID from a glorified wholesaler to a bill collector. Because if I'm basically monitoring my broker's book of retention for free, which, let's face it, that's a big deal because persistency is what matters. And especially coming after COVID, the goal for me right now is to keep every piece of business that my broker has intact. Too much business went out the door last year for obvious reasons. Many people close their doors. Well, we can't control that. But if they didn't pay their premium, I'm the one that's going to help that broker advisor get that client to pay.
Okay. So that's if, I already have the client relationship, have some information and can bring it
Correct.
up. If I'm going to someone cold or if it's a referral, like what's the one or two liners, so to speak, to be able to bring up to really capture their attention? Because how I'm seeing this play out is with someone who either they've been struggling to make a client, right? As that business and business owner, it's a great way to say, hey, you're required to do this. Let me be your person. And then from there, you establish the relationship, you build trust, you follow through on, the promises that you made on the front end. And then you have the opportunity to, and I love when advisors work with business owners because there's so many different things that you can help them with. Their lifetime value in working together is just so much higher than most individuals. So it's a great door opener to then cross-sell your other products and services that you have. But walk me through the one or two liners on how to actually open that door if you don't already have a pre-existing relationship.
When was the last time you looked into your state mandated short-term disability and paid family leave coverage? Because they all know it. And they might say, I didn't know. Who's handling that for you? Because it's required by law. All I need is a copy of your recently paid invoice, and let me take a look at something that you have to have by law, period. That's it. It's a warm lead because the benefit's the benefit. We're not deviating from that. We're just coming in almost like Geico and saying, let's save you an automatic 10 to 15% off of what you're currently paying. It's pretty much that simple. We've got the clout and the leverage where if the risk is large enough, we don't necessarily need a tremendous amount of data because we're using our leverage of our block of premium to get you the best discounted rate as the advisor, right? So we don't make the broker's commission. All of my brokers get paid directly from the insurance carrier. We make an advisory consultant override fee, which has absolutely no bearing on the broker. So they're whole, they get paid, their name is on the application, and we just service the account so they could go out and continue to sell, like you said, the products that they specialize in.
How often do you find, so if it's something that's mandated, right? I'd imagine that most everyone, at least the folks following the rules that don't want to pay fines, have actually implemented this through someone else like you, right? So my question then becomes, Michael, how often do you find that you are able to actually save them money? Is that like, hey, half the time we can do this, all the time, rarely we're able to save them money? So my question would be two-part. How often do you find that you can save a company money on this product specifically? And second question is, why is it that you're able to help save them money, whereas the other people, came in with a higher price?
That would be 85% of the time. And if I already don't have the account, what I realize a lot of the times is, remember, I own several general agencies. So my father started one. He and I acquired another one in 2014, and then I acquired one in 2019. So through 3 general agency umbrellas, we control a dominant amount of the business. Currently, the New York State Insurance Fund has X number of dollars of premium that they service for this particular benefit. I'm just shy of around 11.5% of that entire book. So we control a dominant amount of corporations. As of the turn of this year, we insure 26,000 insureds or policyholders throughout the states that we're in, but mainly in the tri-state area. So the likelihood of us having a risk is high. So I'd say if we don't have it, we could easily get it based on decades of experience and growing our book to become how compounded it's become in like a world of interest, right? So, I could get favors done that no one else would be able to. And that's kind of kudos to me staying in my lane. I mean, I don't want to do other things because then I'm a jack of all trades and a master of none. I like the fact that I'm able to focus, Dave, on what we do best and use that as a door opener. So, yeah, we really won't lose. I mean, I could pick up the phone and go to the head underwriter, the president, the manager, and say, listen, even though this might not be running well, we really need a favor here. What can you do for me? Because it's not what have you done for me lately. It's really, this is what we do for the carriers all the time. We are considered their preferred partner in this space.
Understood. So it's a mixture of clout, longevity, and, the amount of business that you've done through them. It seems like you may have more negotiation wiggle room than some of the other smaller folks out there that are also working with this product.
And it's the service after the sale. I mean, I'll be very honest with you, and I'm not. People ask me all the time, who is your competitor? Because you would mention there's others like me. Well, there really aren't, because we either acquired them or they specialize in major medical, which I don't do. So my 100% might be their 1%, because they're focused heavily on something that I don't do. So there really isn't much overlap. We're still private. We're not publicly backed or owned. So we are able to move and shake very quickly. I give out my software to client brokers for free as an add-on so that they endorse over their book to help me track something that, quite honestly, they don't really want to track. I mean, I'm sort of built the business model with my father on becoming like the redheaded stepchild of the insurance business. No offense to any redheaded stepchildren out there, but it's really an afterthought. I mean, people don't think that there's any money in this. And now, due to paid family leave, that's certainly changing a lot of people's attitude, because there is money in this. And there's money in it with a very little service. You just have to get in and ask the right questions. Too many advisors are whale hunting. That's the problem. And they're all going after the same things. And that's not maybe necessarily our motto, because we do very well. And we don't have a very high turnover at our staff either. We've got a tenured employee here who's been over 35 years, and the newest employee is right around 4. So we have a very good track record there too, which just goes to show you how we offer like white glove service to our clients and also to our staff.
Awesome.
Hey, Model FAs. I know you're enjoying this conversation, but I wanted to take a quick break to talk to you about the Model FA Accelerator. This is a unique collaboration between us and you, where we help you build a financial advising practice that you can be proud of. We focus on the foundational concepts around how to pick a niche or a specialization, how to price your services, how to construct an offer that people are going to buy, and then how to market it and sell it in a way that'll get people to sign on the dotted line and become clients of your firm, all while giving you the information to scale and set up workflows and operational processes that will allow you to reclaim your time and build a practice that doesn't run you. So if you'd like to hear more about that, go to www.modelfa.com/accelerator or www.modelfa.com. Hover over Work With Us and click on Accelerator. Hope to see you in the program.
So before we transition over to, you noted a couple books, that are your favorites. So for those of you who are listening, if this is the first episode that you're listening to in our new format, all the guests, I asked what their favorite book is, and Michael submitted 2. So we'll talk about those here in a second. The whole idea is to promote learning within our industry. I find that, some advisors are complacent, and I believe in the saying, you're either green and growing or ripe and rotting. And other advisors, if they are learning, they tend to stay within the confines of our industry specifically. And then obviously there's, some of you listening to this that do consume, other books and podcasts and things like that. But the whole goal here is to promote learning within our industry, because our industry can be slow to adopt new ideas or new technologies. So if we're learning about those ideas, be it, marketing or tech or, client service, whatever it may be, from other industries, we can take those nuggets and obviously, implement them here. So before we transition to that, Michael, any information that would be helpful for a financial advisor to understand regarding this opportunity that I may not have already gotten from you based on my questions?
I think if anybody is listening right now that is looking to expand their book of business, the best way to do that is on something that's mandated by law. And again, I'll recap the states. You have New York, you have New Jersey, you have Hawaii, you have now Massachusetts and Connecticut. And if you want, I could give a shameless plug to my website if they want to look it up, because all the states are listed there as well. They could go to insurancewholesaler.net. Again, that's insurancewholesaler.net. And there's a paid family leave section that has a whole map of all the states of where they could go. Because let's face it, most advisors, I don't care if you're in Florida or in Texas, there's businesses that are connected to all of those states. Mm-hmm. So it's very rare that I find an advisor that doesn't know someone in the New York metropolitan area or in Hawaii. A lot of people in LA have business in Hawaii and vice versa on the East Coast with Florida versus, Manhattan. So our tentacles extend, greatly.
Cool. So I guess transition over to the books. Both of the books that you submitted, I have read in the past, so I'm excited to talk about them. So the first one that you noted was the Steve Jobs bio. Tell me a little bit more about why you chose that as one of your favorite books.
I was just well, first of all, let me throw it out there. I haven't read a good book in a long time because I've got two kids that are coming up on 8 and 10. So if I'll get 3 pages in, I'll pass right out. I'm not going to lie. I can't keep my eyes open, man. But when I used to read prior to having children, those are the last 2 that I remember reading and thoroughly enjoying. And I think the Steve Jobs was just because he was such an enigma. I learned a great deal about him in that book that I don't think was really portrayed on those mini series and films that were done with him, like Ashton Kutcher tried to portray him and others. And I just felt the book was just phenomenal. And it's sad that we lost him so soon. I mean, he was truly an amazing pioneer, Ben Franklin of our time, which is just sad because who'd have thought he's been through so many trials and tribulations that I also could relate to personally, professionally. And he was a very resilient man. And I have been through a lot in the last 48 months. And sometimes we'll reflect back on, of course, it's a much bigger scale of what he was doing, but sort of that never give up and keep pushing. And I just remember when he would speak to people that he might have been at odds with, the simple gesture of having a walk with them around the Apple campus. I always did that. I always enjoyed walking with people and getting to know them. If there's ever a problem with my staff, I don't like it in my office with a closed door. As long as it's not raining in Long Island, I'll go, let's go outside and just casually chat, because you're humanizing somebody that way. You know what I mean? And I think a lot of that tactic resonated with me too, because of my stand-up and having that good gut reaction of what people feel they want, which I know we're getting off on a little bit of a tangent, is why I really am not a huge fan of doing Zoom calls all the time. I really truly miss that face-to-face interaction. I'll tell you, these Zoom calls, people feel like they get right into it and it's very corporately structured, right?
Right.
But if I was to meet you, I guarantee you off the cuff, we talk about 5 or 10 minutes about things that were something we probably would not have mentioned over a laptop.
Totally agree.
Because I miss that. And coming from the entertainment side of things, I really miss that, because people feel or tend to be more of who they truly are when they're not behind a camera.
I will give you some kudos. So on our first call, we just did the audio, so we weren't able to actually see each other. But I want to say it was at least 10 minutes or so of us just shooting the breeze back and forth. And it was primarily you driving that portion of the conversation, which when I hung up, I was like, oh, that was refreshing to do that. So I feel like on Zoom calls like this, there at least has to be one person who's open to prodding a little bit and getting that other person to open up for relationship building purposes, which I think was, it was super helpful for me to be on the receiving end of that. And, you know, it was fun to have that conversation. So even though you may not like it, I would say that you're doing a good job, at least from my experience, in making it seem as if it's in person. So good work there. Now
I appreciate that.
Yeah, of course. The 48 Laws of Power, that's one of my favorite books. I feel like all of those books. So was it the 48 Laws of Power, The Art of Seduction? I think there's one more.
Yep.
It's slipping me right now, but I feel like in the right hands, it's an amazing skill set to have. I think in the wrong hands, you can really do some bad with it. But I feel like it did a good job of dissecting different components of a human's life and psyche and scenarios that they may come across. And it was a very, no pun intended based on the title, but it was a very powerful book that I had consumed. What were your takeaways from it?
Well, no, I agree with you on all of those fronts. That book actually was handed to me by my dad when I was in high school. And that's why it was one that came to mind to tell you about, because I think what he was trying to do was prepare me for life and, you know, use the word seduce. I mean, that's a great word. That is truly what it is. How to charm people, not really deceive people, but charm them. And I think there was one of the rules is keep your friends close, but your enemies closer to an extent. Yeah. And my father was very good at that, like the Mao Zedong ideology, you know, and my father, coincidentally enough, when he went to Hawaii, really resonated with the culture and the Japanese tradition of how they handled business too. So that was one of the reasons why he had recommended that I read those books, because he would say it's all how you handle it. To your point, if it's in the right hands or wrong, it could make you a better friend, a better lover, a better person, but it could also completely do the reverse if it's in the wrong hands.
Exactly.
You know?
Exactly.
But I think it's a great game of how to socially master kind of what we're doing now, really. I mean, I'm sure that's had some influence into you doing this podcast to some degree, you know?
Yeah, I agree. That's one of the books that I've gone back periodically and either listened to certain excerpts of it or, I've listened to it a couple times through. It's a pretty dense, I want to say it's like 20 something hours long on audio. So it's definitely a dense book, but I feel like the format is pretty good where it like talks about the law specifically. It shares an example from like back, way back when, and then it shares a more like present example. So it's a nice kind of flow that you can get used to really understand or really get a good understanding. It's almost like when you learn a word for the first time, they're like, use it in a sentence, right? And you kind of like hear it in a bunch of different ways. I think that book does a good job of, really ingraining that information into your brain the way that they share it.
And how to conceal your emotions. You see, I remember that one as well. That's a big thing. And see, that to me is comedy there. So he made me read it, and now I'm thinking subliminally. I read it before I did stand-up. It's funny. I'm not that I'm into an astrologer at all, but I had seen one at a party once, and I'll never forget. This individual said, you do a lot of things that are similar, as they were reading my cards or what have you. And I said, I don't understand what you mean. And the individual said, you're an only child. You ran track, which I was fairly good at. It's you in the lane against everybody else. You're doing stand-up comedy, which is your back against the wall. And you do sales, which is also a lonely, independent type of position. But all of those things helped me realize how I could prove myself to be trustworthy with other individuals. And I'll never forget that, because all of those complement into becoming who I am today, which now that I think about it, maybe that book took me to that next level of connecting all those dots and making me who I am. So I think it's very powerful. If anyone hadn't read it, I think they should give it to people in school, I think.
Yeah, I can't recommend that one enough. It's really good. And that whole series of books is outstanding.
Correct.
So awesome. Well, Michael, I appreciate you joining the show. You had mentioned your website. Can you mention that one more time? And then as well as any other ways that people can touch base with you if they have any questions or, want to collaborate with you at all, how can they get in touch?
Sure. So the website, again, is insurancewholesaler.net. They could live chat with anybody on the website. There's a contact us section, which has everybody's email. Mine is there. I'll give it out anyway. It's michael.cohen@dblcenter.com, michael.cohen@dblcenter. And again, the website's insurancewholesaler.net. And we've got round-the-clock 24/7 service, so someone will get back to you.
Awesome. Appreciate that. For everyone listening, appreciate you joining for this show. We're going to enter into the after hours portion here in a second. But as always, two main asks of anyone listening. If you found some value in today's show and you think some of your peers and colleagues would find similar value, just hit that share button and shoot it over to them. That way they can get some of this value as well. In addition to that, one thing that would really help us as it relates to overall visibility for this podcast would be to leave us a review on iTunes. So if you would be so kind as to leave us a review, a little short write-up, and actually just shoot me a text message with a screenshot of that. You can text me at 978-228-2338. And if you shoot me that text, you will be entered into a drawing to get access to our digital component of our coaching, which is the Accelerator program. So just do me a favor and shoot me that text and then just write Michael Cohen in it as well, so I know which episode you are referencing, and you'll be entered into a drawing to get access to the Accelerator program. With that being said, again, Michael, thank you. We're going to be heading into the after hours portion now, where we're going to take off the insurance hat, put on the comedian hat, and hopefully have some laughs.
All right. You got it, buddy. You're welcome. Thanks.
Awesome. So what do you think the majority of states are going to adopt this over time? It seems like you're kind of alluding to that.
Yeah, without a doubt. Yeah, I think it's the natural scale, and thankfully, I'm behind that. So I've got sort of like those wind beneath my sails, you know what I mean, to help educate people on that. And that's what it really is. It's education and consulting. So people that normally would not maybe have come to me in the past because they figure, I'll just go direct to the carrier or direct to this attorney, they're coming to me. So I'm completely in the driver's seat right now, and I'm just trying to stay ahead of that curve. So right now I'm focused primarily on Connecticut at the moment and Massachusetts. I recently opened an office since we last spoke, actually April 5th in Connecticut.
Oh, awesome.
So
what part?
We now have Trumbull, Connecticut.
Oh yeah,
So
one of my first speaking gigs was actually in Trumbull, Connecticut at in Ameriprise, where one of my college friends worked.
oh, nice. Yeah. I mean, it's super accessible from Long Island too, because you could take the Bridgeport ferry to Long Island, And so now I've got like boots on the ground to expand halfway from Hartford to Boston and back to New York. So I'm excited.
Love it. So I got a bunch of would you rather questions that I'm going to bring you through. But before we do that, I kind of want to put you on the spot and see what you got. Do you have any bits that you can share?
Well, I could tell you a true story. So my father thought he was like the Don Rickles of, the insurance business. So he was all about those quick, one-liners. And that was kind of probably where he, came from and his background era. I literally would tell real stories. So like, remember now I'm 41. My first gig, and I don't even know if I mentioned this to you, I started writing for Black Entertainment Television, coincidentally enough, as a writer. Mm-hmm. So if you couldn't tell, right. So it was really funny because when I went there to work, they assumed, because I was like the token white Jewish guy, that I was going to be like their CPA. And I'm like, no, I'm like legitimately here to like work with you guys on the videos and the production. And then they found out I ran track and they would, nickname me things. And I thought it was hilarious. They would call me like a super Jew. And I thought it was hilarious. So I would start doing stand-up and I would tell people that, I work for BET, but I was only Black from the waist up. And I would just kind of zoom right into what I did for them. And then remember now too, like back in 2004, like internet dating was new, man. Like they didn't have any of these apps. So Match.com was like a really big deal. And like J-Date was a big deal. So I had a lot of obviously African-American friends that would say, listen, man, I want you to take me on some of those J-Dates. And I'm like, but you're not Jewish. They're like, Sammy Davis was. So we would like go out and use Match.com and J-Dates to like go and hang, and I incorporated that into some of my bits. So it was really all more like true stories. It was fun.
That's awesome. Well, when they're true stories too, it probably makes it easier to regurgitate them over and over as opposed to like trying to recall, some made up thing. So it means that you've lived a funny life and now you're just sharing the stories along the way.
Well, you got to have thick skin. I mean, to be honest with you, Dave, that's why I decided, I think my father convinced me, get into the insurance business. Like, I don't know a lot of people that, like, people might say they're funny, but they never would, like, go on stage and actually do it. Like, there's a big difference there. And, I made sure I had it memorized to a T because I had done stand-up with folks that would go up with, like, notes. And I'm like, no, like, you don't want to do that. You look weak.
Right.
So when I would do an enrollment meeting with my pop, like I didn't know all the answers. So he'd throw me to the wolves. So there was a guy, like a broker, and I'm like 24 and I'm doing stand up at night and he would send me into the room and he'd leave. And I'm like, oh, great. Where's my dad going? Probably sees this cute receptionist. He's leaving me alone. And this old CFO is sitting there all angry. He goes, so let me ask you something, kid. I'm like, oh, here we go. What do you think is the difference between the pre-existing condition between STD and LTD if there was a known occupation period? I said, man, I have no idea what you just said, but I'm performing Friday night at Governor's in Levittown. If you want, I got 2 tickets. And the guy was like, that's crazy, man. I play guitar. And I started to like open people up with making them feel comfortable because I truly didn't know. And it helped me because I was being transparent with my honesty. I don't know the answer to that. So I get back in the car and I'm not happy and I'm like sweating. And my father goes, you figured it out. And I went, I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, you made people like you. You'll always learn, but the toughest part is making people like you. And you did it. And I ended up getting that guy's business. And still to this day, I know the guy. So I ended up writing a blog before it was popular, like 16 years ago, on how I took my passion to help increase my profits and how I use comedy as a door opener.
Love that. If you have that blog handy, I'd love for you to send it over to me. I'd like to read it.
I got to find that. That was one of my first ones. I've renovated my website so many times since then. I'm very happy with what it's come out to be. But yeah, I mean, that was sort of like what I would do. And I'd love to get back into it again, especially now having children. And I'm just going to throw this out there. My wife was born in Poland, and I only tell you this because she's way smarter than me, and I thought they were supposed to be dumb. But she went to Cornell. She's a goddamn genius, my wife. She's a physician's assistant. She's like summa cum laude. She was like the first in her class, valedictorian. I wasn't any of those things.
That's funny. So a few would you rather questions to round this out, and you can't make any exceptions. You just have to answer it as is. So put you on the spot. Would you rather have
my kids play this, by the way.
Listen, we're having some fun. We're doing some kid stuff. Would you rather have eyes that can film everything or ears that can record everything?
Oh, that's a tough one. I'd have to go with ears. Yeah. Because I'm a big proponent of listening and being a good listener, which helps me in my job. Even though I can't shut up on the show in the right circumstances. In a meeting professionally, I absorb a lot.
Well, and for everyone who's listening and can't see the video, Michael has 2 mouths and 1 ear, so that's why that is.
Exactly.
Would you rather have to wear wet socks every day or only be allowed to wash your hair once a year? And for those listening, he does have hair, just so you know.
Wow. No, I'm going to go with I'm going to go with the hair thing, man. I'm hedging my bet because I think that would smell less. Yeah, I think that would smell worse over time than the hair thing. Yeah. And finally, I hope I never find out, but.
Finally, would you rather have chapped lips that you can never get rid of or dandruff you can never get rid of?
Dude, dandruff all day long, man. Yeah, come on, look at you and I. We're too vain for the chapped lips. We can't deal with that.
It's like
can't
phone,
deal with that.
keys, chapstick, wallet.
Dude. Bro, look at you. Look. There you go, brother.
It's in the pocket.
That's hilarious, man.
Awesome. Well, Michael, I appreciate your time today. I appreciate getting to know you. For those of you who stuck around for the after hours portion, hopefully you found a couple laughs here. And when Michael gets back on the stand-up circuit, we'll be sure to let you know. So, Michael, thank you for your time.
Awesome, man. Thanks a lot, brother. Take care.
Take care.